Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique Jaramillo, your astrologer and host. I believe astrology can fast-track personal growth, improve relationships, and empower parents. On this show, I will bring you practical guidance and insight from my own work, studies, and life experiences, as well as interview experts to bring you stellar wisdom from other teachers and professionals to inspire you on your journey. I'm so glad you're here and thanks for tuning in. So sit back, enjoy the show, and be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to catch every new episode as soon as it drops. Okay, let's dive into today's show. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nurturing Astrology podcast, and welcome to a very new series I am doing. I'm very excited about Astrology and Education. This is a brand new series where we're going to explore how astrology is inspiring the next evolution of how we learn, how we teach, and how we connect. I'm your host, Dominique, and I am here with my wonderful friend, collaborator, and co-host, Melody Whinnery, joining me on this adventure. Hi, Melody. Welcome.
Hi.
So, Melody, for those just meeting you, because I know you've been on the show before, we've had some
Sure.
great talks about many different things. But for those just meeting you, could you share a little bit about your background, introduce yourself again a little bit, and also how you've come to connect astrology with education and child development?
Absolutely. I'm Melody. I am the mother of 4 children, neurodiverse, ages 13 through 21. And I've been studying astrology, oh my goodness, 13 years now.
Nice.
It's been like rediscovering a language I didn't realize I knew. Um, I have had a love of learning since childhood. I absolutely adored school. I absolutely adored reading, and just grabbed everything I could. But I also liked teaching and did it in all kinds of informal ways before my higher education. Um, it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to major in. Education was one of the things I considered, but I saw my education major friends burn out so quickly, even while they were just in college. And over time, student teachers saw them burn out. Um, New teachers in the classroom saw them burn out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I just kept seeing teachers being consumed by the system. And so it kind of turned me off. But I knew I had this inner desire to teach. Um, and that moved me to pursue teaching from home, which is ironic because as I found my chart, found astrology, looking at it. I have Jupiter in the 6th house in Capricorn. So, of course, my desire to teach is in daily life. I absolutely adore Montessori and a lot of the things you can learn in their practical lessons. So it moved me to pursue teaching from home, and I and that was helped because my 2 older children were diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder and with ADHD. And I did send them to preschools to kind of figure out how they interacted with a school environment. And then from there, made my choices and decisions on how to educate them in the home, in a way that would really work with their own unique learning um, profiles.
Yeah.
So I homeschooled them for lower elementary up through kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And I discovered astrology during that time as a passion subject for myself. And it helped me in learning to get to know all my children as the younger two arrived as well during that time. And my first astrology reading, the astrologer said to me, it's my conviction that astrology should be taught to all children K through 12. And that line was a seed that sunk deeply into my psyche and has been a guiding star ever since. That is something that would truly, truly help all people understand themselves, understand each other, and take on concepts that are difficult for us to discuss without activating a lot of angst. Putting it into astrological terms sort of gives us a way to project it and play with ideas without it becoming like a personal attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Love it. Love it. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I was the same way. Like I wanted to be a teacher. Again, didn't work. Even I wanted to be like a family therapist, but again, the system and astrology just seemed to make such a difference. I just was able to go
Yes.
so much more specific. And when I was an astrologer before I had my child, I was able to like see that chart from day one and immediately I recognizing his heavy Pisces nature, especially the Mercury, his learning style was going to be different than mine. How was that going to translate? And then when he was in mommy and me preschool and I was in mommy, parenting classes, everything I was learning about child development completely related to the cycles. And I felt the same way. I was like, hello, I felt like I had this secret kind of tool in my back pocket that I wanted
Yes.
to share with everyone, but I was afraid to because it's a system that isn't open to it. And back then it wasn't,
And astrology
back
has a
then.
stigma.
Yeah, it still does, unfortunately. And this was only like 14 years ago, you know what I mean? Like, so, but it
Yeah.
was not. And so I felt bad. I was like, dang, so I just focused on what I could do, right, with my
Sure.
child. And it was always still a great tool to translate when teachers asked what my child needed or was there anything I should know about my child. I could use it and use the regular language, but I was using that information that I had gained from astrology to
Yes.
help his teacher support him, right?
Right. Right.
And, I even tried my little research projects and tried to get it into the school. Teacher was into it.
Mm-hmm.
Educators, I think, are into it.
Nice.
Even the principal was. But when it got to having to get approval from parents, even with their not really needing their children to do anything, it just put the kibosh on it. There was too much fear, I think, and stigma.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
bam, gone, right? But now I think we're at a different time, and I do think times are changing. I do think times
Mm-hmm.
are changing. And
Yeah.
even though it's crazy and a lot of systems are breaking down, especially the education system, I think it's time for that. And this is opening a beautiful window and door for this kind of
Absolutely.
evolution and growth in education. And I got goosebumps on that. I'm super
Yes.
excited
Yes.
and hopeful, right? So
Much.
we are already seeing this. We know astrologers to some degree are doing it. We know that educators are into it. We see parent child astrology, we focus on temperament teaching, which is a big passion of mine,
Mm.
and even the learning styles you can see from astrology. So we know there's astrologers out there doing it, and even educators who are interested in it. Montessori schools, sometimes Waldorf schools use it,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it
Mm-hmm.
is in there. It is infiltrating a little bit, right? So maybe this series we're hoping can be the beginning of even more conversations around this and to start hopefully what we have hopefully a dream of putting together is our astrology and education summit. That will be our next summit. And someday I think this is going to be the beginning, hopefully, of that beautiful dream coming to be so that we can bring some people together and start sharing information from real educators, other astrologers, and people who are on this, like, feel as passionately as we do about this mission.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
And you bring such a great lens and a unique perspective and language learning. Like you have such a great background. I think you're the perfect like co-host, because I'm
Thank
not a
you.
teacher per se. I'm way into astrology and I've been like mine's experiential and learning
Mm-hmm.
about temperament and like my experience of seeing child development embedded in the cycles of astrology. So I'm hoping that between the two of us and maybe some great conversations we have and some guests we have on, we can really like get this ball rolling or help this beautiful dream and mission forward and change in education, right?
Let me just straighten your crown for 1 second and remind you that you're a teaching assistant, which
Oh,
means
that's
you
true.
have teaching experience.
That's true. I mean, I do. I teach every single time I open my mouth because
Yes.
I'm an Aquarius, but I
Yes.
forget that sometimes. So thank you, my
You're welcome.
thank you.
Yes. Yes.
So, okay, so today we're going to ask this big opening question, right? Is there room, yeah, for astrology in education, right?
Yeah.
And what that might look like
Right. Right.
potentially in this coming age, right? So, we've discussed this. Astrology can be like the underpinning of every academic subject, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We've had this conversation. So, do you want to share more about this and your perspective of how astrology can really naturally start to be embedded into education.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's fabulous that I started learning astrology while I had very, very, very young children, because I was aware that they were being asked to find shapes around the home. And at the same time, I was learning what Mars looks like as a symbol. The glyph for Mars is an arrow on top of a circle, and those are shapes that kids have to learn. I was learning about aspects and how they formed triangles and squares in a 360-degree circle, which is geometry at its very basic form. I was learning the shapes and order because I had to learn the order of the signs. And I would fall asleep at night, like memorizing the order. And when my youngest got really into it, it was just about, gosh, 3 or 4 years ago, I discovered her actually doing the memorization. I have a little floor rug that shows the signs in order with, planetary rulerships and things like that. And she
Okay.
would walk around the circle and just not really sing, but recite the
Yeah.
signs, and was getting into discussing them with friends. And a lot of what's out there in the popular, like she would have these friends who would have ideas about the sun sign,
Mm.
uh, the sun signs,
Yeah.
your typical sun sign stuff, and whether or not people were compatible. And I encountered young kids when I visited her classroom and talked about being an astrologer, um, who had very set ideas, like already that young, about these people are bad for me. And I thought, oh my
Mm.
goodness, if it's already happening, how can we overcome and show people that just because a sun sign is here doesn't mean the whole person is like
Right.
not beneficial to them or doesn't have anything to offer, because they
Yep.
do. Um, Learning the symbols, learning the signs, learning the order of the signs can correspond to telling time, because
Yep.
it doesn't just teach you the night sky, which you can see, rotates through the evening, but also, it corresponds to hours on the clock.
Yep.
And if you're learning to tell time on a clock, learning how the sky moves isn't the same, but it definitely accesses a similar
Yeah.
thought process in your brain.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I already mentioned learning basic geometry with angles and the 360 degrees of a circle. Um, oh, history. History. We
Yeah.
have, especially in modern astrology, we have researching astrologers who are looking at the aspects between the outer planets and how they correspond with the zeitgeist in the world. Revolution absolutely has to do with Uranus and Pluto
Oh, yeah.
squaring and conjuncting each other. And it's been correlated and shown that those things are true. And so underlying our history,
Hmm.
there is an astrological component that can be studied and shown in
Yeah.
multiple research works. Um, and that is a fascinating way to access history,
Oh my gosh,
and
yeah.
and see how the humans who are part of that history, who made major global decisions, were also a part of that time and what those things were saying in their charts.
Yep.
Um, we can see, let's see, mythology,
Yep.
because the planets and the signs have mythology attached with them. There is and mythology doesn't necessarily go towards history, although it has a historical basis.
Oh,
I
yeah.
see it
We
more
study
as
mythology in school now.
right. I see it more as a bridge between um, language arts
Yeah.
and interpretation,
Mhm.
because astrology, a lot of people just see astrology as interpretation, and that's why they downplay it, because so much is influenced by people's inner belief system that is unseen. But it definitely has a lot to offer in terms of language arts and discussing interpretive ideas.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually shines in conversation rather than rote memorization, limited word lock
Hmm.
in, because it's a symbolic language. Each
Yep.
symbol can mean multiple things, and people
Right.
can actually access everything that the symbol uh, holds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Love it. I mean, from basic math to,
exactly.
literature, geometry, history. And I was thinking while you were talking, I was like, oh my gosh, like Cosmos and Psyche should be like
Yes.
cool,
Cosmo.
right?
I was just reading, I almost brought it up. Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas.
Yes.
I was reading it this week just to kind of refresh my memory on some of the things. I was looking for a specific aspect that he did not include in that particular work. I'm hoping one of his future ones will.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, getting goosebumps because I had this thought. I was like, okay, we should do a talk like literally on books, that
right.
shouldn't be in classrooms
Yeah.
because even Cornelia's new book about the New Birth Chart
Yes.
of the US, about the Treaty of Paris. I mean, that book is literally 100-year history lesson with astrology weaved in. I mean,
Right.
it's right. And
Right.
even on her other passion in terms of raising children and her Kid Wheels book is teaching
Yes.
temperament. We just finished teaching the class through Kepler, and it was like every preschool should have Kid Wheels. Every
Yes.
preschool teacher should own Kid Wheels. It should be
Yes.
in preschools. It's a
Yeah.
simple thing they can learn. It's observable. I mean, it would just be a shoe in, right? So those
Yeah.
kinds of things, I'm like, we need to talk about different books that would easily translate, right?
Right.
And there's
Right.
that
Uranus
one.
and Gemini, man.
Yeah, there's
Books.
that wonderful book about the about numbers and geometry and shapes and whatever that easily connects to astrology.
Which book is that?
It's a beginner's
Ooh.
guide to constructing the universe. It's a
What's the first word?
beginner's guide to
Beginners. Okay.
constructing the
Mm.
universe. And I mean, it's numbers, shapes, it's all in nature, and we connect that to astrology.
Oh
Like
my goodness.
so
That's
I feel like
beautiful.
we also that needs to be something we should talk about. Like we could do a whole episode on like books that would easily.
Yeah. My favorite on that topic is called Math for Mystics.
Oh yeah.
It's yeah, similar. Yeah.
Okay,
We
cool.
should
So
we should
like
absolutely note it for a topic
absolutely.
coming
So
up
that's
and
a
just
good
do a
one.
little book review.
Love it. Okay, so before we dive deeper, let's set the stage here with the actual astrology of the now. So we
Yes.
know what's inspiring this conversation. We've been talking about it for a while. We're already experiencing the Uranus and Gemini, which we will be working through till 2033.
Yeah.
And we have Pluto, who's just stepped into Aquarius, which will be here
Mm-hmm.
till 2044. And these
Mm-hmm.
two in this beautiful trine right now.
Yeah.
But the trine is with, Uranus and Pluto and Aquarius. So this is definitely about shaking things up. And this doesn't mean, even though it's a trine aspect, I think this is a good example of how an easy flow aspect with these particular planets in these particular signs is about revolution and change. It's not necessarily going to be easy shaking up
Right.
systems, breaking things down in order to like open up possibilities and awaken other possibilities of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So this feels like a combination like that is made for this moment in terms of innovation, new communication, reimagining the classroom and the future of education and how we learn, how we teach, and shared knowledge and wisdom. So what do you think about this Uranus Pluto action in air signs? And what stands out for you as far as the change in education and learning?
I'm going to backtrack just a minute
Yeah.
and just tie in. The reason I went looking at Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas this weekend was because I was like, okay, I know he covered whole chapter, Uranus and Pluto, all the
Yep.
different cycles, what it means. And it was all conjunctions and oppositions with some squares thrown in. And I was like, oh man, I really wanted to see his
Talk about
research
the
on
trine.
trines. And I'm going to have to dive deeper and see if he's got something online about it because it's not in the book. Um,
Yeah, because they do tend to focus on hard aspects.
hard aspects
And I
because they're
always
so dynamic.
and they are dynamic and those are changing moments and that's it's very true, but I just think that we know that if there's a lot of positive aspects in a chart, easy flow, it sometimes is hard to make things happen.
Right.
because it's all, well, that's working out. So there's nothing, somebody has to come in there to make a hard aspect in order to activate that and make things happen. And I think the energies that are going to be coming to set off or square, right,
Mm-hmm.
or conjunct these trines, this trine between these two will be where those, maybe those moments of breakthrough start to happen or
Interesting.
awakening start to happen.
We'll have to watch the sun
We'll
and
watch
Mars
that.
and how they
Mhm.
aspect those things because they're the ones that kind
Yeah.
of spark that change. But the other
Yeah.
thing that I'm realizing as we're talking is sometimes we look to the angles for that dynamic change,
Yep.
but what's actually happening in this particular trine is the change of sign. And that
Yes.
is significant change, even though it's not reflected in the aspect, it's reflected in the we're moving from earth to air.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
both of them are significant. And
Major.
because they are major shifts from an element, a sturdy, strong, steady element to a more intellectual, change oriented. How are we thinking about these things? And maybe we should reevaluate that.
The
As far as
community aspect, the
yeah,
Aquarian community aspect, right?
yeah,
I think you're
yeah.
absolutely right.
And
That's
as
a
far
huge
as
component.
education goes, I did a little, I used to love word studies. And so I just did a little cute word study on the roots of education.
Okay.
Educare in Latin means to mold or to train. And I was kind of discouraged,
Oh,
honestly, because the root comes from an outward, an outside of the self molding or training.
okay.
And I really truly believe, and I think we're seeing it in our systems, no one learns unless they want to. Like education starts on the inside. And I've seen this with my kids. I've had teacher conferences where the teacher literally said, your kid is not was talking about stubbornness. Your kid is not making themselves available to learn. And that's true. Like that part of a dynamic is true. If someone doesn't want to learn from another person, they can shut it down, which basically tells me, Pluto and Aquarius, that our power for learning is within ourselves.
Mhm.
And if we choose not to learn because the system is broken, we will look somewhere else. Because another thing that I've observed and benefited from the Montessori um, system of thought is that learning is our natural bent. Children are curious.
Mhm.
And if we're not in a environment that suits us for learning, as far as our style or what inspires us, we will go elsewhere. We will look for it elsewhere. And the beauty, and this might be another topic, of having the internet available to us in this age
Mm.
is that we can learn about
Yep.
anything online.
Yeah.
And if you're curious, you can go do it if your energy isn't so sapped. Like I have some kids who, by the time they get home from school,
Yeah.
they just want to veg. And it makes me sad because I'm sure they're curious about things, but they don't necessarily go searching because they're just maxed out and they don't even want to think about learning something new. Although I truly believe one of my other influences is Marshall McLuhan, and a favorite quote that he has is anyone who wants to tell you the difference between education and entertainment doesn't know the first thing about either one because there really is no difference. Entertainment will educate you. There are lessons to learn in every story, and quite often you can see the belief system and the philosophy of the people producing and creating the entertainment,
Oh my
right?
gosh. I love watching the behind the scenes stuff when they on anything I'm watching, just the thought process, the character work, the all of that stuff is so interesting. And
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. Kids will disengage if
Hmm.
they are not interested. And I do think there are some diligent children because I do say I do see that my son has really good grades. He works hard. He's a Pisces. Things come to him, but he's not loving school. He's not loving what he's
No,
learning. He
no.
just wants to do a good job and he's a good kid and wants to get good grades. But you're right, there's no room to explore something he might actually be interested in because he's completely saturated with just keeping up with getting the work done and keeping his grades good for sports or
Yeah,
whatever, right? Like,
yeah.
so I agree with you. And I think that's the thing. I think the kids are actually already feeling the shift. These next generation of children are already kind of pushing it. Tech is coming fast. And I understand, like, I do think it's important that, and this should be really cool to talk to educators if we can get some teachers on
Mm-hmm.
about tech in the classroom, and we should have these episodes on tech and AI because I know they're making them do more writing in school in so that they don't go to those resources outside, which I think is good, right? So because we do need them to be able to use their own minds, those thought processes, so problem solving skills, like there's skills that need to be developed and honed, but I think you're absolutely right in terms of it being a self-motivated thing. And I, as a mom who loved to learn and loved school, I was like,
Yeah.
I get more excited about what he's doing than he does sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to recognize that's not who he is. That's not,
Right.
so young people are very different. I think that they are restless in these systems. They're not working anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard. Teachers are up against a wall trying to teach to 35 kids, sometimes more, right?
Yeah.
And get the curriculum done and don't have time to like configure by learning styles or understand all of these other things. But I think
Right.
that it could be built into the curriculum. Like some teachers are exploring that already and it does
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
can help. So, I mean,
Yeah. I
Uranus and Gemini
honestly,
kids are teaching us. They're showing us the way. I think the future is them and we have to like set
absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. I remember that my kids came home from school talking about classroom agreements, social contracts that they would make. I don't know if
Okay.
your kid ever did, but I would see classroom agreements posted on the wall at like teacher parent conferences where
Okay.
they would go through with the kids and talk about the environment that they were going to create together as a class. And I think tacked on to that might be let's just frank conversations between teachers and students about learning being something very personal, and that just being really frank, as a teacher there's a lot of pressure. Kids pick up on that. Why
Yeah.
not just own it? Why not just own it? Kids
Mhm.
already know the teacher's stressed, so why not just own it and say, hey, here we are, we find ourselves in this situation. The
Yeah.
goal is for you to learn. I want you to learn as much as you can, however you can,
Yeah.
and uh, help me understand how you learn, and put kids in a little more ownership and responsibility. I think that's working with Uranus and Gemini, as far as accessing that uniqueness, that human uniqueness, that resonates with Aquarius, and personal power where Pluto is, but also in the Gemini young mind, gathering as much information as you possibly can.
Yep.
I know that's pretty focused on elementary school, but I think Gemini resonates with elementary school. Once you get into high school and college, we're talking Libra,
Agree.
which will absolutely still resonate as an air sign, but it's, kind of secondary in that trine
Yeah.
when we're focused on Aquarius and Gemini.
I think that's a good point that Gemini is early childhood learning, right?
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
maybe that is the step in because young kids are curious, they're more open. You start to get into those like high school teens, they're really trying to find their unique way, that Aquarian,
Yeah.
like breaking with the convention and doing
Yes.
their own thing. So I do
Yes.
think that there should be more freedom in the older grades. But if you've laid this foundation in the early childhood learning, like I said, preschool, early childhood education, elementary, they're
Yeah.
curious, they're open, it could really lay a different type of foundation to
Hmm.
help fuel that future
Yeah.
learner, right?
Yeah.
And cultivate that future learner that is more independent, that is more self-driven.
Yes.
And I know I'm not a homeschooler, but I know from my friend who across the street who's homeschooled her 4 kids, right? Is you can actually learn the basics in a very short amount of time
You really
every
can.
day versus the 6 hours they're at school or whatever. So there is a lot of like scheduling time where there could be a lot more self-driven. I wish there were more electives, you know what I mean? Being able
Hmm.
to handle those things.
Yeah.
Because that's especially around that time, that middle school time when it's time to really explore your interests. Take those
Yeah.
electives and see what you might be interested. Like my son did take some, you get art, they do have art,
Yeah.
they do have
Yeah.
um he had video production which came really
Right.
naturally and did great, but
Yeah.
it's just there's not that much. And
Yes.
it's not like
Um,
they sometimes get to choose themselves either,
yeah. A
you
lot
know.
of people are turned off by homeschooling because they think they have to recreate school and do 6 hours. And that's actually not true. The 6 hours, one is to help the workforce have childcare, and two is to facilitate a teacher over 26 to 36 kids. And each child is going to get about this much or less personal attention
Right.
and and you know what they need, that personalized education gets
Mm-hmm.
missed unless you have a neurodiverse accommodation. One of the things that
Yeah.
first started turning me on was I have a kid with an autism spectrum disorder, and they require an IEP, an individualized education plan. And the more I heard it, the more I was like, every kid should have an individualized
Love that.
education plan. Every child deserves an individualized education plan. Now, the actual like individualized education, the actual IEP as it's enacted is full of goals that are very
Mm,
hardcore, like you must do this by this date.
okay.
And that didn't actually serve. Like
Yeah.
it ended up turning us away. Like it really ended up being very discouraging instead of the helpful tool that it was supposed to be.
Mm,
And with the ADHD child, it was 504 plans and accommodations, which were mostly helpful, but sometimes accommodations just led him to, it was just a longer leash and he'd take as much as he needed and it didn't actually
yeah.
support him in what he needed. And that's through no fault of anyone's. Like I
Yeah.
can see why they're designed the way they are and how they're supposed to be helpful.
But
I
again,
just,
it's
I
not
really
for,
feel like every child deserves an individualized education plan. That's where I
yeah.
was going with that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The systems don't work for everyone. It's really hard to create a system that works for everyone. I even
Sure.
believe that the homeschooling movement and even charter school movement came out of not agreeing with the systems or not the systems not working,
Hmm.
or having too many kids and
Yeah.
like not being able to have a little bit of freedom and even space to,
Yeah.
raise your child or teach your child in a way that worked for them and
Hmm.
that worked for their family or whatever. So I think some of
Right.
those things kind of grew out of that, right? It'd be interesting to see,
Yeah.
look back at history, like when those started to pop, what was happening astrologically. Because I hadn't, but I'm sure there was something.
When what started to pop? When which thing?
Homeschooling, that whole
Oh,
movement started,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then charter schools started popping up, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then there's the community charter schools and cohorts. I mean, there was these different, so I feel like in a way there have been seeds planted for where we are headed now. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
The fact that, you know, the education system itself, especially in this country, is being completely demolished and it's going to be sent back to the States or whatever,
Right.
it's in a way that can be, that's the destruction of
Freeing, freedom,
freeing for us
destruction.
to
Hmm.
create something new. Um, and it is hard to do it individualized for each child, but that's where, again, I think astrology can help because it doesn't have to be every unique child, but certain types of learning styles or certain,
Absolutely.
energetic
Absolutely.
signatures. There are ways. And that's
Yeah.
where astrology, again, comes back in and can really help this. So
Right. Right.
I know you,
I would love to I haven't bought Cornelia's book yet. I'm so waiting to have the
oh,
the ability to get my hands on it, but I would love to see in the chart how education is reflected, because I see it as both highly valued and devalued at the same time. Like it, we elevate people who have higher education, but we don't pay the people who provide education all along the way much at all. Like,
I agree.
and that is so like skewed to me that it creates this place of ambiguity where I can stand up and say, yeah, I may not have a specific education degree, but I have the experience of getting an education in a lot of different ways. I was homeschooled for a year myself. I had a private school education, I had a parochial school education, I had a public school education.
Oh, nice.
So I've seen a lot, not all of it, but I've seen a lot, and my experience informs my opinion on education. And just because I haven't been through a specific degree program
Yeah.
doesn't mean I haven't studied education. And a lot of the people that this country built its identity on were self-educated people. I'm inspired still by the Little House on the Prairie series and how they valued education but didn't always have a town school to go to, and so they studied at home through whatever books they had. And there's our founding fathers stories and
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln studying and
Yeah.
so many things in our national identity that value education. And yet also here we find ourselves in this time where our Department of Education is being dismantled.
Yep.
I got on a rant. Take it away.
No. There's going to be some of those.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it would be lovely. We all recognize systems need to change. It would be lovely if they could be worked at, evolving and changing and improving from a compassionate, holistic place, as opposed to just, feeling like everybody's just destroying everything and leaving everyone to their own devices. And this is
Yes.
again, like you said, where we don't have traditional accreditations as teachers, but all mothers are teachers,
Yes,
right, in
that's
itself.
true.
And we do have life experience. And I do think that there's room for both, and there's great value in both. I You make this distinction between education and learning. We've kind of talked about
Yeah.
that. We're diving into that in terms of our country and how they've devalued it. You're absolutely right. We've talked about, neurodiversity. You have,
Hmm.
that's a really like a passionate point for you. And I do feel like there's going to be a redefining of that. We're all neurodiverse. That to have a mind is to be neurodiverse, right? So I feel like it shouldn't be a stigma, just like we all learn differently, and let's support unique learning styles and
Yes.
individual styles. Do you have any like real strong thoughts or feelings about that movement in terms of neurodiversity, since you have so much experience with it? I know there's been advances in science and education.
Yeah.
I mean, the diversity is far more common, you know.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, we're recognizing it more and more as a
yeah,
common
yeah,
thing. That hopefully will be taking the stigma off of it. I feel like quite
yeah.
often it gets used
A
as a
diagnosis.
dismissive tool, like, oh, you don't understand because you're not
Yeah,
like us. Um, and there are, as a family of majority neurodiverse people, even among a neurodiverse community, there are misunderstandings. Like it's
hmm,
super easy for our brain to put things in binaries because it's the shortcut for making quick decisions, and our brains have evolved to try to make quick decisions so we can be efficient. Um, but it doesn't serve who we are as the human race to not allow for a full spectrum of
yeah,
differences and attempt to accommodate as many people as possible.
yeah,
And that's not always putting them in baskets.
yeah.
Um, it's an interesting it's an interesting idea that I studied way back, that education changed during the Industrial Revolution, and maybe we'll cover that in one of our history topic.
Yeah.
Because once the Industrial Revolution happened, we kind of moved from a small one-room schoolhouse into a grade level, separated out,
System, yeah.
bigger schools, bigger classrooms, and that changed the way teachers did their job. Um, and I've done some reading about that and how that did not actually help education itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I
So
forget where we
astrology,
were
I think it,
going. I
well, yeah, the diversity there. And I think that
yes,
astrology, the point is astrology can help even help those um nurture those differences and empower those
yes,
differences and create
yes,
compassion around those things instead of like boxing or diagnosing or stigmatizing.
right,
Again, astrology does bring us back to this place of compassion for differences
yes,
and recognition of us all working differently, our minds working differently, approaching life and things differently, especially learning. And
hmm
so I do believe that that foundational use of astrology in terms of helping create compassion and, respect for differences and finding commonalities and working to see where we agree or is foundational. And again, I
yeah,
mean, we know as kids, like when they understand, maybe it is start with like sun sign or little things like that, like behaviors and stuff. It's like that they're just that's who they are, and they're still learning, or they're still this, or
yeah,
it's okay. Like it all creates compassion and
yes,
acceptance of differences rather than stigmatizing, isolating, separating, creating divisiveness, right? So
yeah,
again, us astrologers who love astrology realize that beautiful human thing that it does. And
yes,
that's what I think education needs more of.
right.
I
I
mean,
was so
humanity needs
inspired.
more of it, but it starts in the classroom, right? It
Yes,
starts
I
it
was
all
so
starts in the
inspired
classroom.
by that post you shared with where the teacher grouped her initial classroom by elements
Element.
of their sun sign. That was so inspiring. And
Yep.
even that she switched it up in the middle of the year and
Yeah.
observed the differences in those in their temperaments. Like
Yeah.
that was fabulous. And just the small
Yep.
little thing that was astrology based, but not necessarily taught or acknowledged, like, and
Right.
how it was helpful to her.
I think that's the basic thing is like if astrologers could help translate the basics in a structure that could provide something for teachers that didn't have to go into all the depths that astrology can go, we know the basics are huge. And
Yeah.
that teacher did learn like separating them by element didn't work. Right? She's like, oh, okay, we can't have all the fire over here. We can't have all. So then you go, okay, now we learn how water can help the earth, or they can work together, or air and fire, like be careful which, like then you start to be able to create balance in a classroom,
Yes.
create
Yes.
groups that actually bring all the elements together. So it's a
Hmm.
great way of team building, and
Right.
there's so many great things just in using elements
Yeah.
and basic understanding of sun signs, even if that's what they get into, because astronomy and astrology are the
Right.
same, right? So and
Right.
the connection to mythology. I mean, there's so many things. When my son was like writing something about mythology, I was like, ooh, I just wanted to get in there and talk about the story and how it was connected to
Right.
astrology,
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
So I don't think it is for astrologers. I don't think we think it would be as difficult or a
Right.
tough sell. It's
Right.
just the open mind of the systems to
Right.
try these things. And that's why I feel like if we can get teachers together, educators
Hmm.
together,
Right.
and even help create curriculum or things that would help them in the basics that they could
Hmm.
bring into their classrooms and into the way that they teach, that don't have to butt up against or create conflict even with the information they have to teach, or whatever system
Right.
they're working within. Like that's, I think, another
Yeah.
cool conversation is how can teachers actually learn and bring it into their classrooms in these subtle ways. And like I was telling you earlier, like that's one of Alex Trenowर्थ's biggest things is like helping
Yeah.
teachers not burn out by bringing astrology into the classroom and in these creative ways, especially for middle schoolers, is her focus because it is such a place of
Oh, yeah,
yeah, of
for
turning
real.
point in growth. And so we should definitely have her on if she's open to chatting, which I'm sure she is. This is her
So
first time as
excited.
well.
Yeah.
So that's such a, this is so great because we are trying to bridge this gap, right?
Mhm.
Between astrology and
Yeah,
education.
absolutely.
We know there's a bridge. We know there's so much that can be built. And so in this series, we want to do that. We want to have great conversations that can bring possibilities, ideas. And I've I've had this dream of creating a coalition even of, astrologers and educators to help move this forward. And maybe that's a big I feel like it's a big thing.
First steps are first steps.
First steps are first steps.
We're here.
You're here, and me and you having these conversations, we've decided to start having them live, start having them in recording so that we can share them and get more people in the conversation to create community around this passion. And yeah, I think this is a great
Absolutely.
start to it. So I feel
Absolutely.
like what we want to kind of, are there any thoughts or that you really want us to hit with this first one to invite our listeners to engage, and for educators listening or anybody who wants to like come and be a part of this mission or this passion of ours and have conversations with us, or your thoughts about the theme in general before we close?
Mm, just astrology has so much to offer
I know.
that it seems a shame that it's been neglected. And I hope in future, I hope in future sessions to kind of access the history a little bit, like just maybe a nugget or two of what happened when astrology was first shunned, uh, demoted, because it's been so integral to the growth of the human race all through history, and then to be completely rejected by science and the church at the same time,
Yeah,
when both of them have their roots in it,
I know.
it's gut-wrenching to
Yeah.
think of all of that knowledge cut off at the source, um, when where we are now was built on that as the foundation. And to think that we would cut off our foundation because we don't know how important it is to us. And astrology is part of that. It's where we first started scientific model, like
Mhm.
observation and hypothesis and interpretation, and to just completely shut it off is ignorant.
Yeah.
And um and I really feel like it can be not only redeemed but um shown to be much more valuable than we realize, that there's a treasure here.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
There's a here. Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Thank
That's why
you.
you're my partner in this. I can
I
get so
appreciate
excited
you.
and you bring it down right to the core. I'm like, yes, yes,
Mm,
absolutely. So
thank
true.
you.
Um, oh, I don't even want to, I don't even want to stop talking
I know, same.
forever. Um, but I totally agree. And that was so beautifully said. And I do hope that maybe the Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius, maybe it is where we can breathe new life, and we will be breathing new life into astrology in a way that does bring it back to its, um,
Yeah.
I mean, my dream of astrology always has been to destigmatize it, and it
Same.
this and see these kinds of evolutions and revolutions of its value.
Yes.
And at the same time, I know I've secretly kind of stayed on the side because it is so taboo and people can be so like, and it's like it's time to like let that go. Like it's
Right.
time to like, it's for the
Yeah.
future of our children, for this world, like I think astrology needs to take its rightful place back
Absolutely.
in the
Absolutely.
conversation and in learning and education. And so hopefully this series will help us inspire that and get more people talking about it and bring some great people on to talk with us. So definitely let us know if this rings your bell and you are
Yeah.
wanting to come on and have convo with us or have thoughts and things you want to share or ideas, right?
Yes.
So I think we're going to do is we're going to try and have some weekly, what we're calling thought starter episodes, right?
Hmm.
Where we might have a question or a thought that we want to kind of dive into. I think we've kind of hit on a few already that might be really fun to get to, but like, is there room for astrology? Obviously, in education, we know there is, but let's
Hmm.
explore like in what ways, right? How that might
Yes.
be. Or we have to have a conversation about tech and
Hmm.
AI and all these things. And then just like reimagining the classroom and how teachers can use it.
Yeah.
I think it might be cool to talk about resources. We've already talked a little bit, like hit these nuggets of like some books that would easily be great resources to bring in.
Yeah.
And also some foundational things like can the chart really be that map for
Hmm.
teachers and how can it easily be done and starting with the basics.
Yeah.
So I think there's some great topics and ideas we could already start with. Um,
Yes.
and I'd love for any of you out there listening to this, if you have thoughts, questions, say, hey, here's a question. I really would like to dive into this, and
Yes.
we'll chat. If you want to come on and talk with us, you can, or you can drop
Hmm.
the question and we'll talk about it. We'll share our thoughts on that. So I'm super excited to get started. I'm so excited that we had this foundational talk, and I hope that our passion and excitement resonates through to you out there listening, and you know we do more chats and people really start to awaken this energy of Uranus and Gemini, right?
Awesome. Awesome.
So
You said something just a minute ago, that astrology could breathe new life into education, and breathing new life. What better, says Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius? Like there's the breath, the air. So, yeah.
yeah, it's time. Thank you for
Hmm.
talking with
Thank
me and
you.
breathing the life into
Breathing new
this
life.
passion we've had for a while. I'm glad we're getting it started.
Yes, me too.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one. Stay tuned for that first thought starter. Okay, bye. Thanks for listening, and I hope you gained some great astrology insight and inspiration from today's show. I'd love to hear, so drop me a comment or share in a review. Check out the show notes for all the details and links about today's episode, how you can connect with me on social or work with me directly. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Oh, and for my moms out there, be sure to join my private Conscious Parenting with Astrology Moms group on Facebook. Come join a growing community of like-minded mamas supporting each other in the hardest job in the world with the help of astrology. Hope to see you over there. Take care and keep nurturing the nature, friends. I'll see you on the next episode.